does bring home to us the importance of considering how we ought to be different after we receive Christ and make Christ Lord of our lives. So let's just read these first two verses. Who would like to read those for us? Chuck? Thank you.
Therefore, I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Do not conform any longer to the patterns of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will.
Okay, thank you. And that was a wonderful translation of those verses, and we'll now pick them apart here just a little bit. I appreciate the fact that Chuck's version that he read began with the word therefore. Now, for those of us with the New Revised Standard Version, therefore comes a few words in. With the New Revised Standard Version, it begins, I appeal to you, therefore. And Chuck started with, therefore, I urge you. But I want to focus on those two words. I want to focus on therefore, and I want to also focus on urge and appeal. First of all, therefore. Now, what do we know about therefore? It's a hinge. Thank you, Marsha. It excites me when my students remember. Okay, it is a hinge, therefore. As I've often said, and I've heard others say, whenever there's a therefore, you have to consider what the therefore is there for. Okay, that hinge. So it's a hinge between what has been previously said and what is about to be said. And most often, it signals that we're going to move from the more theological explanation to the more practical. So here is the truth. Here's the theological understanding. Here's the content that helps us to understand God better and what God desires of us. Now, since we know that, therefore, do this. And this is, it's going to be the practical aspect of the therefore that we'll focus on today. I urge you. I appeal to you. In the King James, what does it say?
I beseech you.
I beseech you. Not therefore. Therefore. Exactly. I beseech, I urge, I appeal, I plead. Anything else? You get the idea, don't you? Paul does not want to express these important words as dictatorial. I command you. You must. But rather there is this urging that I believe there's a lot of affection with it. I appeal to you. I urge you. In fact, in another portion of Scripture, and you don't need to turn there. Let me just turn very quickly to Ephesians. This is not unlike what Paul does in other letters that he writes to believers. This is what he writes in Ephesians chapter 4. He says, therefore, the prisoner in the Lord, I therefore, the prisoner in the Lord, beg you. I beg you to lead a life worthy of the calling to which you have been called. So there is this wooing that Paul desires to extend to those believers who need to understand clearly that there are implications for believing wholeheartedly in the gospel of Christ. And this is what he encourages us to consider. That by the mercies of God, we are to present our bodies as a living sacrifice. Present our bodies as a living sacrifice. Now, I've heard it said that the problem with living sacrifices is they tend to crawl off the altar. Dead sacrifices don't crawl off the altar, but living sacrifices tend to crawl off the altar. That's us. In other words, there are perhaps times when we're quite serious about giving ourselves wholeheartedly to God. And we lay ourselves at that altar, if you will, willing to give our whole selves completely to God. And then there are other times when, because of circumstances, the situation, whatever it might be, we crawl off that altar. We don't want to give ourselves wholeheartedly. So present your bodies as a living sacrifice, a living